for three. And goal!
Bearcat Blitz time on the Believe Network. I'm your host, Russ Heltman. He's my co-host, Neil Meyer, coming at you with another summer show this week. Looking at Bearcats basketball and Bearcats football. Really just talking about Bearcats football this time around as we get into the weekend very shortly. You can check us out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, whatever podcast platform you frequent. You can check us out there. And also on Talking Cats with Russ Heltman, every single show posted on YouTube as well. And before we get into today's show, we got some topics to touch on. Of course, we were talking about Kolin Wilson, 3-star running back, one of the lower rated commits from Cincinnati, no longer committed to Cincinnati, going to Mississippi State as his new committed home. And we're going to take a look at kind of the major class rankings across Rivals, 24/7 Sports, and On3, and see where Cincinnati stands with 14 commits in the class right now. We'll take a quick break after that, and then we'll talk about some future opponents, the indoor performance for center as well, and kind of close the show after that. But first, got to tell you about Bet Online, our great presenting sponsor. They're your number one source for all your sports betting needs this season, from baseball, golf, soccer, right up to all the fights in UFC, MMA, and boxing. Every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games are being played are available. And when the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker or unwind with one of our over 150 slots games. Head to the website today to get in on the action and use promo code BELIEVE. That's a BLEAV for your 50% welcome bonus on that first deposit. Bet Online. The game starts here. Big thanks to Bet Online for presenting our show each and every time out here. And we'll get to a quick break before getting into the show. Thanks to some of our great sponsors here. Give them their great flowers. We'll get into another edition of Bearcat Blitz. There we go. Got the right return button there. Bearcat Blitz. Let's fire it up, Neil. Bring you in now as we welcome on Neil Meyer of frontofficenews.com and bearcatstalk.com. Neil, Kolin Wilson gone from Cincinnati's commitment list. He is headed to Mississippi State, the 3-star running back from Gulf Shores, Alabama.
Yeah, and news broke last night that Kolin Wilson was going to flip his commitment from Cincinnati to Mississippi State, an SEC school, which probably outside of Cincinnati, Russ, was probably one of his highest reported offers as of right now. Because if you look at his profile, according to 247, he's only been offered. He was one of those guys whose recruitment just started to jump. He has offers from schools like Cornell, Harvard, a lot of Ivy League schools. Then you have Northwestern, Toledo, Troy, UAB, Western Kentucky. So he was a guy that was kind of one of the early commits of the class, but now you see them bring in a guy like Zion Johnson. They also bring in another running back, which is a guy, well, he was the second running back of that class, now looking at it, but still you have a really high talented guy in Zion Johnson there in the running back class. But it's also too, Russ, that position, you and I talked about it, you're going to see a lot of guys come and go at that running back position there in recruiting, because it's one of those positions where everybody is looking for a running back there in the high school ranks or in the transfer portal. But Kolin Wilson was a guy that saw time at wide receiver. He finished with 33 touchdowns and nearly 2,300 all-purpose yards during his junior season, leading his Gulf Shores squad to a 5A state championship in Alabama. So he's a very dynamic playmaker, but he now flips his commitment from Cincinnati to Mississippi State after announcing that on social media around 8 p.m. last night.
Yeah, and then Wilson, 85 overall ranking on 24/7 Sports. It's not, if you're going to look at any of the commits on the current list when it was at 15, Neil, and pick one that you'd be okay with leaving, it would be Kolin Wilson first. Like, you already have a running back, higher rated running back at Zion Johnson in the fold. Running backs, let's be honest, people, they're a dime a dozen. You can get them really anytime you want at any point in the calendar. And especially when you're not losing a premier running back talent at that, and Kolin Wilson, maybe he'll end up being the best running back in college football for Mississippi State. Who knows? We know, you never know what happens with these recruiting rankings. Sauce Gardner was a 3-star at one time, but just where we stand today, it doesn't feel like a massive loss, Neil, but it goes to show that you and I, we love covering this stuff. It's very good for our websites in terms of traffic. People eat it up, all that stuff. It's all well and good, but nothing really truly ultimately is finalized or ultimately matters except for signing day, putting that pen to paper, signing that NLI, and locking yourself in. Until then, Neil, Cincinnati could lose all 14 of these recruits to better offers and better situations. That's why it's so difficult to maintain and create a strong recruiting class unless you are one of those giant powerhouses in the power conference ranks, especially with those 4 stars that they have in the fold right now. They're going to have to do everything they can. They're going to have to work very hard to keep those guys in the fold and keep them from flipping to better perceived situations.
Yeah. And as you mentioned, Russ, everything comes down to National Signing Day, which is the first round of signing day is in November this year. But until then, you never know what might happen on the recruiting trail. Russ, this is year 5 for me on the recruiting trail covering this team, and you see it every year. But until National Signing Day comes and that pen is to paper on the NLI, you never know what could happen. That's when it comes official, is when that pen is to paper. But as you mentioned, Russ was one of the guys lower in the rankings, but this is where you come in and you really have to continue to build that relationship once they give you that hard commit. Once they give you that verbal commit, if you continue to build your relationship and continue to show and stand on what they're saying to these young men, build their relationship, they're in good standing. But you never know until when those powerhouses come in, especially Russ right now in the landscape of college athletics with the NLI, name, image, and likeness, all that kind of stuff. You never know. You never know what could come in terms of powerhouses, NIL, whatever it might be. But until that pen's to paper, that's when it becomes official.
Cincinnati looking to get some more guys to commit and ultimately put pen to paper, especially on the trench front. When we look at that's the big bugaboo right now for this class. They've hit the skill positions well. They've hit the kind of exterior guys well. But when you look down the line, it takes a long bit of scrolling before you get to Samuel Page at the 86 overall ranking, and the only other offensive lineman alongside Jahari Medlock at 87 overall. So those 2 guys are 2 offensive linemen. And then you also have Benny Patterson in the fold as well at defensive line, and some guys that could end up, hearing different offers. You got to stay vigilant. And we know where they're doing that there. They know that over in Clifton. We don't have to tell them that. They know what to do. They have done a solid job so far. We'll see if they can continue maintaining this class and replacing. Obviously, they will replace the talents of Kolin Wilson with someone else. Neil, looking at the rankings right now, going through all 3 major services that have recruiting rankings up. Cincinnati, number 36 on 24/7 Sports with 14 commits right now. When you look at Rivals, Cincinnati a little bit further down the list, 14 commits listed on Rivals, same amount, but they have them at 49 overall nationally. And then you look at On3, where they have Cincinnati slated kind of right in the middle of those 2 spots, with Cincinnati actually not right in the middle. They have them similar rankings to Rivals, with them 49th nationally with 14 overall commits. That's kind of right in the middle-ish of the Big 12. When we look at On3's overall Big 12 rankings, Cincinnati 8th right now in the entire conference out of the 16 teams, just behind TCU, UCF, Texas Tech, Arizona State, Oklahoma State, West Virginia, and Kansas. Neil, it feels like probably right about 6 to 8, 6 to 9 is the range that this class is going to slot into in terms of the overall Big 12 rankings. And for a second class with a team coming off of a 3-9 record, seems pretty solid. And I would give them I mean, I would give them a pretty solid grade, a solid, what am I looking for here? Solid setup for the future years if they're able to get things right in that range, which is what they're tracking towards right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And anytime you can slot anywhere from that 6 to the 9 range in your second year as a head coach on the recruiting ranks, especially in this conference, in the Big 12, you're doing something right. And Russ, I believe it was you that asked Scott Satterfield this earlier in the spring about the question of how long does it really take to build up a really strong foundation after a season like last season in year one. And he even told us in the media scrum that it could take up to 2 to 3 years to really build that foundation for what they're trying to do. And you're looking at year two, and you see across these recruiting platforms, 247 has Cincinnati at a 36, as you mentioned, and then Rivals and On3 have them sitting at a 49. But you're looking down at what these classes have. You have the 2 4-stars right now, which Mikhail Skinner and Jamari Deloach are probably going to be 2 of the bigger guys in this class and will be the headliners. But Russ, you're looking at some of the talent that he's been able to do, especially this past offseason in year 2 in the portal as well. But looking at what he's done, he's got a guy in Patrick Williams that we haven't really talked much about too, Russ, that's sitting right there in the rain of fire, ready to come in and step in. And that's another big pickup as well, because you're seeing the defensive backs. You're seeing the kind of talent that he is going out there and targeting there on the portal in the recruiting ranks. So to sit right there, see him sitting right there in the kind of the midst of things at that in between that 6 and that 9 slot within the Big 12, maybe they jump a little bit higher. You never know, but sitting in that range right now, you got to have a good feeling heading into the 2025 recruiting class for sure.
Right. And I'm interested to see, is it 24/7 Sports? Do they just like the guys UC's recruiting a little bit more than these other services? And I wonder what the discrepancy, why there's that big 12 spot discrepancy between Rivals and On3 and then 24/7 Sports. But it'll all just keep shifting and shaking and moving over the next 2 months anyways, with more recruits and commitments coming in across the country. So we'll obviously keep our eyes on that. And we'll take a quick break here before getting to some of the future opponents slated for Cincinnati. Fans up in arms, Neil. I had a lot of people just PO'd about the quote-unquote terrible competition and look at how far UC has fallen kind of rhetoric that's going on around these schedulings. Patience, people. Take a deep breath. It's all going to be okay. We'll tell you why after this break right here on Bearcat Blitz. Neil, we have some future opponents that are from the FCS level over the next couple of years. These are the kind of 2 designated FCS games in 25 and 2026, one each in each of those years. And I don't get why people are so upset about this. I don't understand it. You are playing in a 9-game conference schedule. You have a 16-team league in the Big 12. There are now 12 teams in the college football playoff. You don't have to schedule solid competition every single week of the season anymore to justify a lower tier power conference school or even a group of 5 school getting into the dance. You have to win 11 games to get into the Big 12 or get into the tournament, in my opinion, moving forward. You have to find a way to get 11 wins. Maybe some schools, those SEC powerhouses, those Big 10 powerhouses, can get in with a 10-2 record and not playing in their conference title. It's one of those kind of wild card teams that we're going to see. But Neil, it's going to be, especially these first couple years in this iteration of the Big 12, where I don't see a true mix of powerhouse schools popping up in the Big 12. You're going to have to get to 11 wins and a conference title to make the college football playoff, in my opinion, as a Big 12 school. And so to do that, you can't schedule hard teams each and every year, which is what Cincinnati has obviously recognized. And they are bringing in Northwestern State from FCS next year and Western Carolina from the FCS ranks in 2026. Obviously, they're undefeated against these schools, 2-0 against Northwestern State, 41-0 win in 77, 66-9 win in 2013. And then they they didn't destroy Western Carolina, a little bit of an odd score back in 2005, 7-3 win over Western Carolina. Neil, this is just your typical buy game scheduling for the sport of college football, especially a power conference outfit that, like you just mentioned, like I just laid out, they know that they're not going to have to play 1,000% hard, can't have one cupcake on the schedule type of slates moving forward because of the access to monetary funds they now have, because of the competition in the league they now have, and because that league, Neil, is not playing 8 conference games. They're playing 9, and that allows you to put one cupcake on the schedule because you are adding a power conference opponent in what would usually be an easier 4th non-conference game.
Yeah, and it's great that you mentioned that, Russ, because obviously we saw the fans' reactions to the Northwestern State and the.
I was surprised, man. I thought people would be like more kind of aware of why they're scheduling teams like this, but
yeah, a lot of people were upset on social media that Western Carolina and Northwestern State get added to the non-conference schedules. But Russ, let's talk about the 2025 non-conference schedule right now. You're looking at it. You kick off with Nebraska at a neutral site. And if I remember right,
that's Lucas Oil, right? Next year?
Yeah, it will be at Lucas Oil Stadium, where Cincinnati is getting a boatload of that revenue, if we remember, correct. So they're getting a boatload in the revenue portion, which is great because, yes, everybody would rather have it as a home game, despite it being an hour and a half down the road from some people where you're, depending on where you're located at. But then you have that's going to be your game one. You have, obviously, you have the Battle of the Victory Bell with Miami, and then you have Northwestern State. So that's your non-conference schedule, which is finalized. Now, the regular season.
That's in a conference schedule where if they win 11 games, Neil, with a conference title, they will be dancing next year. No doubt about it.
Right.
Unless one of those losses is Northwestern State or something. But even then, like if you're a Big 12 champion, you're getting into the dance.
Exactly. And Russ, we have seen it. Anytime that they have kicked off a season versus one of these Big Ten, or last year it was Pitt, this year it'll be Pitt as well in the ACC. That could be your ultimate opportunity right there, where you can sit down and that could build your resume. Nebraska's going to compete in the Big Ten. I mean, they're going to be middle of the pack probably within next year. I wouldn't say they're going to be at the bottom of the Big Ten, but they're still going to be competing in the Big Ten.
Yeah. Who knows about what 2025 Nebraska looks like? We'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
Overall, if you're upset about that non-conference schedule, I think people got to really kind of put it into perspective. You get your one Power 5 team, you get your one FCS, and then you get your one Group of 5 team. That's going to be your non-conference schedule in college football for who knows how long. And if you're upset about it now, in my opinion, look at the schedules from recent years. Nothing's changed.
And I think it's probably just the fact that I can understand that knowing it's a home game, especially for season ticket holders, you're like, why would I even show up for this game? Like, why do I care about this game against this kind of competition if that's what you're going to schedule? And I can understand that. But the big picture wise is you should be happy about this kind of scheduled game. You need these kind of tune-up games early in the season. They don't get preseason in college. Yep. They're just going at each other one-on-one, mano-a-mano at Camp Higher Ground. I thought this team could be a 5-6 win outfit last year from what I saw at Camp Higher Ground. You get to the season, they start off 3-1, and they go 8 losses in a row from there on. They were not a 6-win outfit, to say the least. So you gotta be able to onboard that competition, and especially if you're able to do it as a week 1 game to onboard in the season, that's the best way. But we'll see how that all shakes out. I forget, Neil, is the Nebraska game finalized for a date yet next year?
I believe it is slated for August 30th at Lucas Oil, with the time and everything still to be determined.
Okay, well, there you go. So that's going to be a tough power conference game opening the season right there. And then you're going to mix in the lighter opponent later in the non-conference slate. But overall, I think it makes a lot of sense that they schedule those teams. It's just
exactly.
We're doing business in college football, and you got to get these bye games, Neil. Like,
they reshaped the 2025 non-conference schedule, if I remember right, because wasn't Ohio on that list, Russ?
Yes, Ohio was. That was actually supposed to be the return game to Ohio, the game that I covered my junior year at Ohio University back in 2018. Desmond Ridder, one of his big early showcases, and they still had never actually ended up playing that game because of, I think, the 2020 was when they were scheduled to play the return, and that was the COVID year, which obviously wiped out the non-conference slate for the AAC. So that's all wrapped up, Neil. We got those two opponents on the slate and largely finalizing the non-conference schedules. They were getting close to finalizing those. 2025 basically finalized with Nebraska, Northwestern State, and who it's going to be Miami. Battle for the Victory Bell, obviously. IPF, the indoor performance facility, is coming together, Neil. The roof looks like it's almost done. It's basically up right now. The bare bone structure, the cool architectural design of the structure is noticeable now. They had a good kind of work. There was no Hard Hat Wednesday yesterday, but there was a cool drone video wrapping around the entire complex there at the the corner of Corey and Calhoun right there. It's going to be an beautiful facility, Neil, slated to be fully done by spring of 2025. And it sounds like maybe we'll be watching spring practice inside the bubble back this time, or a few months from now in 2025.
Yeah, and it's looking fantastic too, Russ. I mean, it's great to see how quick the progression has been moving along on that. Obviously, $134 million project is never an easy task to get built, especially on a deadline. But overall, Russ, man, it's going to look fantastic. After seeing how the roof's already shaping out to be, ooh, Russ, I'm so excited to see what that practice facility is going to look like. Hopefully, we'll be in there next spring, checking out some spring ball. But overall, it's coming together quick. And as you saw that drone video, Russ, it's going to look pretty epic. So really excited to see how that turns out. But yeah, come fall, Russ, I'm really encouraged to see the progress that they'll have made on the new indoor practice facility for sure.
Exactly. And hopefully we get in. I'm sure they'll give a nice little media tour. Yeah. All the reporters and outlets that be. I'm excited to see the inside of that thing for sure once that goes down. For Neil Meyer, I'm Russ Heltman. This has been Bearcat Blitz presented by Bet Online right here on the Believe Network.
This is the second. 15 seconds left. Shot clock off. 4-point game. DeJulius puts up a three. Yes!